The Fall was a band. The Fall is a TV show. The fall is when all the pretty leaves turn colors. But we're not talking about those falls. We're talking about fantasy fallers. Producer, hit that button. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Forecast with Grindberg and bigz. He is Grindberg. I am bigz. Schultzy on the ones and twos. We're here to talk about draft fallers in redraft fantasy. Most of these are based on landing spots, but let's get into it. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good. It's getting close to the summertime here, and it's the dog days of the summer almost, and we're ready to get some fallers into place here after the draft. And we talked last week about our rookie risers, and this week we're going to talk about some guys that maybe fell to our expectations here. And so we're going to get started right away. But Schultzy, how are you doing, buddy?
Hey, fantastic, man. Ready to fire off another one. Honestly, it's probably about to be the best episode we've ever done.
Probably
I would say, yeah, I'm going to have to say that too. I mean, big name rookies on this list, and they may have gotten the draft capital, they may have gotten a good situation, but they may not have hit on all three cylinders, and maybe not going to be on our radar this year in redraft. So we're going to get us started here. So Schultzy, let's bring up the first slide, and we'll get Big started off on his first faller of this draft class.
Surprisingly, I think there is a 3-cylinder motor that was made by Citroën in France, and they had little mountain climbing vans that they would put the 3-cylinder motor in. Other than that, you're going to want more than 3 cylinders, Mike. Okay, I'm going to talk about Eli Stowers. This is a kid out of Vandy. He's a Vandy boy, and he had a nice little career. 2 years at Vanderbilt with Diego Pavia, the very controversial Diego Pavia. He had 638 yards and 5 touchdowns, and then 769 yards and 4 touchdowns. Very athletic, hyper-athletic tight end. There was some quibbling going into the pre-draft process where most people had Kenyon Sadiq as the number 1 tight end of this class, but Eli Stowers lovers made a little bit of noise and said, hey, wait a minute, this guy's probably going to be better. He's more polished. He's got the snaps that Kenyon Sadiq doesn't have. He's more savvy. And so a lot of people were super high on him. And then a funny thing happened on draft day. He goes to Philadelphia, and we all know that Philadelphia has an incumbent tight end who's basically locked in as the tight end 1 on that squad. So for redraft purposes for 2026, Eli Stowers probably isn't going to get a lot of run unless there's an injury to Dallas Goedert. So if you want to take a chance, maybe draft him late. It's likely that he's going to be on the waiver wire at some point. Maybe somebody will draft him because he's going to be good, and then wind up dropping him once they see that he's not playing a whole lot. And then he'll be available just in case you want to stash him for something happening to Goedert. But other than that, I'm not drafting Eli Stowers.
Yeah, me neither, man. I mean, I think it goes to say here that we were pretty fortunate the last couple of years to get a couple of these tight ends that were, performing well as rookies, but that's not always been the case throughout the years and history and reality here, where it's not every year that we see a Brock Bowers or a Sam Laporta or a Trey McBride hit the market. So we're going to have to be a little bit patient, I think, with some of these tight ends. And, let's just, continue it right now with the tight end that I'm going to talk about him, falling a little bit because of the draft. And I'm not saying long-term that Kenyon Sadiq is a guy that I'm out on. I think his high pedigree, is there. Sadiq, after his landing spot with the Jets, it was a little bit disheartening for me, especially when you look at who they also drafted in the first round, fellow rookie Omar Cooper, creates even more of a crowded offensive picture. Garrett Wilson obviously is the true alpha in that offense, and he's going to garner targets. Breece Hall. Now they got two of these high upside rookies all fighting for targets in an offense that I can't see scoring a whole lot of points. And I think Sadiq and Cooper are going to kind of eat each other up in the middle of the field here. And maybe there's going to be some value there, but I think there's not going to be a whole lot of target like opportunities for these guys. The volume's going to be tough to come by early. And I think, Sadiq is going to have to work his way through Mason Taylor too, who's a good blocker to start as well. So I think that this might be a situation where we're going to have to wait, similar, just like Stowers, because of landing spot and the competition and just essentially the low passing volume and the low scoring offense that I think this team is going to be in the Jets. So the fall is a classic case of elite talent meeting a very crowded situation rather than any flaw in his game. The Jets give him first round capital, but pairing him with Omar Cooper and, Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall means, us managers might exercise some patience for meaningful rookie production. And that's what I got to say there. I think it's a tough sledding here, but in the future, I think both those guys, Stowers and Sadiq, have some bright futures as, plug and play guys year two and potentially, every week starters in fantasy come year three, if not a bit sooner than that.
Yeah, I buy the talent. Just the situation is less than ideal. Mason Taylor he's gonna start, and Kenyon Sadiq is gonna be a different type of receiver than Mason Taylor is. And then you've got the Garrett Wilson factor. When you've got another guy on the squad who's going to be getting 10 targets a game, it's the rest of the targets need to kind of get spread out. And Adonai Mitchell is there. Omar Cooper was drafted. Kenyon Sadiq, Mason Taylor. There's a lot of mouths to feed, and behind Garrett Wilson. So, yeah, I'm probably still drafting Sadiq just based on the talent, but it won't be till later in the drafts. And I have high hopes, but he definitely fell.
All right, Schultzy, who is the guy that you saw falling or didn't see falling, but certainly fell? I mean, he didn't even jump, in my opinion, if you look at what he did at the combine.
Yeah, so for Michael Trigg here, now when we're talking tight ends, there's not like a huge crop of guys to pick from here that we were looking at for some big-time fantasy relevance, but we were kind of expecting Michael Trigg to at least get drafted. Maybe probably, a day 3 pick, but maybe like if we had picked up like 4th or 5th round draft capital, like that would have been really, really awesome. Obviously it didn't happen, didn't get drafted. And sometimes, NFL teams can be dumb, right? Like all of us know that they can make really stupid decisions when it comes to player evaluation. But sometimes when 32 teams pass up on a guy 7 times each, there might be something there to that. And with Michael Trigg, the story is a guy we've got some athletic traits we like, and we love the arm length, right? The wingspan. He's got some of that contested catch ability, and we were hoping to project that forward to some good draft capital, and for a team to see those skills and to say, hey, well, we can work with that. We can move forward with this. Unfortunately for him, he's not a good blocker. And that's probably a big part of him not getting drafted as we see the NFL move to 12 and 13 personnel more. Just look at the draft this year of how many tight ends went in the 2nd and 3rd round that like I'm not going to say none of them, but most of these dudes won't have fantasy relevance like ever in their career, but they're going to serve their purpose in the NFL still. So teams maybe just aren't valuing the skill set Michael Trigg brings as much anymore as we shift into some more of this tight end usage. I don't know. Regardless, lands in Dallas isn't the worst landing spot, right behind Jake Ferguson. So like the immediate path isn't there. We saw like just a Rondé Gadsden last year, passing tight end or receiving tight end profile, gets himself, he got drafted, but 5th round, gets later draft capital and finds himself in a good opportunity, and boom, it exploded. That's just not going to happen here. Jake Ferguson's a solid NFL tight end. Michael Trigg isn't walking in that door and just isn't blowing the doors off, right, and taking the job. That's just not going to happen. I'm not going to say he's not going to ever turn into anything. It's very possible. There are tools here we can work with, but for redraft purposes, we needed the draft capital and we needed the path for a guy like Michael Trigg, and we got neither of them.
Yep, and we all recently just did a dynasty startup, and I took a chance on Trigg in round 23. So if you have a whole 12-team league of gentlemen that know ball, and he lasts to the 23rd round, he's not draftable in redraft, and I had high hopes for him coming out.
Yeah, that's exactly the same sentiment as 32 NFL teams passing on him seven times each, right? I mean,
yeah. There was not much there. Obviously, they saw it, and before we get back to it, I'm going to do a quick shout out here to our sponsor, Fantasy Spin. If you want different kind, spin out. If you want a different kind of fantasy experience, Fantasy Spin lets you spin your lineup, make your picks, and compete in tournaments based on real player performances. Check the link in the description in the pinned comments and use promo code FORECAST. Just deposit at least $10 and play at least one tournament to get $30 in bonus play. Support the network. Check out Fantasy Spin and let's make some noise. All right, bigz, let's get into your wide receiver windfall faller. Here we go. Let's talk about my boy, my guy, if you will, in our rookie prospect guide at the wide receiver position, and that's my homeboy Omar Cooper. And not a huge fan of his landing spot.
I don't know if you know what homeboy means, but you've never been to Indiana. Anyway,
Omar Cooper that's Jr. my homeboy right there.
Omar Cooper Jr. lands with the New York Jets. We just got done talking about Kenyon Sadiq. The same things apply to Omar Cooper Jr. He's in a very, very heavy offense with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, who take targets away. I like Cooper better than Sadiq. I think he'll have a more productive rookie season than Sadiq will. But still, when this guy was in an argument to jump into the top 4 or 5 wide receivers, this landing spot is less than ideal for him to produce like that in his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, I still got optimism for him, but it's going to be a crowded room. Like I mentioned in the last segment with Sadiq, I just think that the whole situation there, I think they're going to kind of cannibalize each other with targets and stuff. So, not holding my breath, but maybe there's some brighter paths ahead for these guys, and we'll see how the first little bit. Maybe a guy that, certainly worth rostering maybe in the later rounds in deeper leagues, but right now, certainly a guy that might be a waiver wire pickup guy down the line if he can carve out a role here. But certainly got to, outplay Adonai Mitchell here right out of the gate. But that first round draft capital is probably going to give him the early track here out of training camp.
Look, you take all these mouths to feed in that offense, and that stinks, right? And that's kind of the big point here. But we can't even overlook the fact that they all went to the freaking Jets, man. Like, this team's gonna suck this year. Aaron Glenn's a god awful coach. I mean, they don't have a quarterback. Like, what do you expect out of these guys?
Geno Smith,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, we saw what we were optimistic about him last year. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, we're going to talk about a guy that may not fell a lot, in Dynasty or redraft because of, where a lot of people had him. But I personally had Makai Lemon as my wide receiver 1 headed into the draft, and he fell 2 spots, and now he sits at wide receiver 3 for me. So that's quite a bit of a faller here, in my opinion. And that's just based off of what I saw here by him being selected by the Eagles at number 20. And I just think that, his clear wide receiver 1 path is not there anymore. I see the alpha there being Devonta Smith, and, obviously AJ Brown is maybe on his way out. It hasn't been set in stone, but obviously all signs are pointing for him to be out. But Eli Stowers is another challenge that he's going to have to overcome here. bigz mentioned it earlier as well, but also Dallas Goedert, who's a solidified guy there, who's the number one in those intermediate routes. So I could see this being a tough situation and in an offense that doesn't pass a whole lot. We got to think about what we saw in the last couple of years. They were very much run heavy offense here in Philadelphia, and there's things that are pointing at not a dominant target percentage. He's a slot only guy, and we'll see what happens. He's proven that he could play a little bit on the outside, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case here in Philadelphia. That's probably going to be more of the Smith role now, and be interesting to see. And the landing spot scares me, and just the falling role. So I much prefer now, tapping, Jordan Tyson or Carnell Tate now quite easily over Makai Lemon. Maybe in 3 years, that might be a different story if Philly changes their philosophy and he becomes more of a centerpiece. But I love his talent. I love his upside in fantasy football, but I'm just cooling off a little bit now on Makai Lemon, who was a lot higher on headed into the draft process.
Yeah, and you can't say that A.J. Brown isn't in the wide receiver room until A.J. Brown isn't in the wide receiver room, right? He's like, there have been rumors that he's on the move, but that hasn't been set in stone. So if they continue to move forward for 2026 with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, that leaves Makai Lemon out. One thing that I thought as soon as they drafted him, because they traded up with the Cowboys to pick him, maybe they're interested in moving on from Devontae Smith and keeping A.J. Brown. Nobody's talking about that. But if they do, Makai Lemon slots in right where Devontae Smith is. He's kind of like Devontae Smith at home. So, yeah, future, yes. Now, no.
Yeah, especially now, no, because if we look at how the offense struggled last year, you're going to lose A.J. Brown, we project, but you add 2 more mouths, so we're a net 1 mouth to feed here, right? From last year. But if you look at how the offense struggled, I am fully anticipating them just handing it right back to Saquon. Some of the reports that came out about Jalen Hurts and his leadership, and the way he acted in the locker room, whatever, all that stuff. Like, to me, this is screaming the Eagles are going back to 2024, and Saquon is getting the ball a bazillion times.
Indeed.
All right, yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. All right, let's move on to your guy there, Schultzy, who's a guy that bigz had highly touted earlier in, and just the landing spot. I'm interested to hear what bigz has to say after you talk about Denzel Boston there, Schultzy, because, it's a tough landing spot. Still, in a couple of years here, this could be a very good situation here in Cleveland if they can find a quarterback eventually, and, some of these pieces that they have in Fannin and Casey Concepcion. But obviously, Boston lost a little bit of stock here. Talk about that, sir.
Yeah, so ideally, he would have gotten drafted to a team where he would have unquestionably been top 2 in targets, and that just didn't happen, mainly because they took Concepcion in round 1. Now, had they taken some other random player, an offensive lineman, let's say, instead of Concepcion, then drafted Boston in round 2, I would probably be thinking about maybe putting Boston as a riser. Like, that's an immediate path to playing time and targets. But when you draft a dude ahead of him in the first round, you have Harold Fannin breakout last year as a rookie. Those targets are only, you have to project that upward. Like, Denzel Boston to me is probably going to be 3rd on this team in targets at best, year 1. And then you're just tagging it with bad quarterback situation. It looks like, right now, it looks like they're going to really trot Deshaun Watson out there. He hasn't played in a couple seasons, and when he last played, he was garbage. So you've got this complete question mark that, let's be real, is probably not going to be very good. And then your next option is Shadur Sanders, not good. Dylan Gabriel, not good. So kind of like what I said with the Jets, like, what are these guys supposed to do? So not only is Denzel Boston walking into a situation where he's probably going to get the third, he's going to be third in the pecking order at targets, I think. There's not going to be anyone worthwhile throwing in the ball.
Yep. This was a gut punch for me on draft day. I thought that he could have gone to a much better situation. Like New England would have been great. Going to Seattle would have been pretty cool. Maybe the Raiders picked him up, and then he goes to Cleveland, where they had already spent higher draft capital on Concepcion. There's quarterback confusion, and then garbage quarterback play behind that. They already have Cortland Sutton. They have Harold Fannin. They have a bunch of guys in that wide receiver room, and it's going to be a dogfight for any of them to kind of become a leader in fantasy. So this one hurts.
Yeah, it would have been cool for him to go to New England, and then we could have literally called him Denzel Boston, but not happening anymore. So let's move on. All right, so let's get into the running backs, bigz, and talk about your Faller, who wasn't on a lot of our radars, but headed into the process, as a highly touted guy, but probably completely fell off of most people's radars now, looking at where he landed and not really being drafted at all. So,
yeah. Are you gonna put up the slide? There it is. All right. Jamari Taylor was a much talked about guy in dynasty circles leading up to the draft. He had 1,000 yards rushing and 14 touchdowns at Virginia. That was after transferring, having his career in the FCS. And then he made it to big time college football and absolutely showed out. Goes to the pre-draft process, and he was definitely a riser, somebody that was on a lot of people's lists. And then he got drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. With the Jaguars, they already have an established running back room with Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez. DJ Dallas has, he's been around the block in the NFL. LaQuint Allen is somebody that we kind of had our eye on last year. But Bashal Tutin and Chris Rodriguez are going to be the go-to guys in that backfield, and there isn't a lot of space for Jamari Taylor. So had he gone to a better situation, I would fully be invested in taking him in redraft, but there is no path onto the field for Jamari Taylor in 2026.
Nope. And similar to Michael Trigg, you would just hope to at least pick up some sort of draft capital here.
Yeah, correct. But yeah, I mean, you never know. An injury or two happen, and he's a running back that could be on the radar here in a Liam Coleman offense. So I don't mind the landing spot. There's still not a number one guy out of the gate here in Jacksonville that we see yet. So until the dust settles, we'll see what happens. So certainly a guy you may want to have it on your deep rosters in Dynasty as a stash, because certainly a guy that based on what we've seen could certainly put some value there down the line.
Yeah, I just, I just don't see him beating out Chris Rodriguez and DJ Dallas. He's got to work his way through 4 or 5 different bodies before he gets on the field. And I don't know if we can expect to see that.
He's got to make a roster first.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right. And he was an undrafted free agent. And that's that's the big death knell is nobody picked him.
No one picked him. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into my guy here, who's someone that I had waffled through my number 2, number 3 running back throughout the pre-draft process, because he kept popping out on my film, popping out in the combine, and then didn't really pop out in the draft. Day 3 draft capital brought a tough dose of reality for Mike Washington Jr., whose stock, in my opinion, fell noticeably after the Raiders selected him in the 4th round, 122 pick. And, pre-draft, I talked about him being my RB2 in this class, and I had him pegged to land in a favorable situation where he could, quickly emerge as the lead back thanks to his explosive, combine testing, his efficient production last year, and his 3-down skill set. Instead, he lands in Las Vegas behind, a backfield where, Ashton Jeanty is clearly the guy that is there. And, it's not a horrible situation by any means for Washington. He becomes a really premier handcuff. I think he can come in and, take, 30% of the snaps, probably year one, which is probably draftable, but I was just really hoping for a way better opportunity because of his physical tools, his efficiency. I just think the landing spot forces me to make some major adjustments in his expectations. That 4.33 40-yard dash was something that I really love to see. I know it's just a straight line, run, but the guy's a big guy. So seeing that kind of speed and explosiveness was really hoping. So maybe down the line, heaven forbid an injury happens to Ashton Jeanty, and Mike Washington is a guy that could come in and really do some damage as well. So not a horrible situation by any stretch of the imagination, but I was just hoping for him to, land in a spot where he would have an opportunity to get a role right away. Not saying he's going to, not have a role, but a more prominent role where there's more of a path for him to be a lead back in the future, where I just don't see it right now with how important Ashton Jeanty's draft capital is and pedigree he is for the Raiders.
I would have liked to see him go to Jacksonville. I'm not upset that he's on the Raiders, and I can see, it's a Clint Kubiak offense. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, they got along. You have Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery working in tandem, being both fantasy relevant. Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. There are a couple of double backfield situations that we can kind of hope to project Mike Washington having, some kind of relevance, although he's not the alpha. So we were hoping for him to take somebody over, and now we know that will never happen.
Never happened, but premier handcuffs. So at least we know the expectation now when we're drafting him, and some of these guys, they're going to be complete dart throws. At least we kind of know what we're going to get with Mike Washington now, and that's not a horrible thing, and could turn into a league winner or something were to happen to Ashton Jeanty, heaven forbid. But yeah, all right.
Stop saying those words together.
I said heaven forbid. Heavens forbid. All right, Schultzy, talk about your spotlight guy, and we haven't done the spotlight video, so let's talk about a guy, Jonah. His name is Jonah.
All right, here's a guy. And his name is Jonah Coleman. Got drafted by the Broncos here in the 4th round, which is a little disappointing on both fronts for draft capital and landing spot. The entire group of this running back 2 through 5 pre-draft rankings was, we kind of talked about how it was just kind of a jumbled mess, and anybody could have ranked any of those dudes how they wanted, and we wouldn't have faulted anyone for it. The NFL told us everything we needed to know about that, and that it was that Jadarian Price is the number 2 guy here, and the rest of them are just some more dudes. And it's disappointing because I did like Jonah Coleman as we went on here more. I just felt like he was going to translate well, could just do a lot of everything well, and he was just going to make his way onto an NFL field and be a good NFL player. And I was kind of hoping for maybe second, probably not second, but probably hoping 3rd round. But he goes to the 4th and he gets drafted by the Broncos, like I said. But the thing that stinks here, especially redraft purposes, is this is a 3-man backfield instantly. Najee Harris, RJ Harvey, and Jonah Coleman. Najee Harris, who they paid money to. RJ Harvey, who they drafted earlier than they drafted Jonah Coleman. And then Jonah Coleman. I just don't think there's any way to slice it. This year, I think all 3 of these guys are going to get some run. Jonah Coleman's going to have to be very impressive early to get a real chunk out of these snaps. But it is possible. He's a good player, and I think there is a path for him to show that he is the guy for Denver down the line here. But unfortunately, when you just got 3 guys who seem to be, pretty of NFL quality backs, that's pretty murky, and it sucks.
Yeah, Harvey Dobbins, Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Bidet, who a lot of people saw play in spare time, but really liked him. There's 8 guys in that running back room right now with Jonah Coleman. So he's going to have to if there's one running back that doesn't fit Denver, it's Jonah Coleman. He's a 3-down guy. He's not this guy goes between the tackles and this guy is like a shifty scat back. He does all of it. And it was absolutely terrible for him to land in Denver. But, away we go.
I mean, it's not the worst spot. I mean, I get it. It's not great, but I think that he's got an opportunity because his talent's there. So there is an opportunity to eventually him, take on a prominent role there. Obviously, maybe not this year, maybe halfway through the year, he could, start playing more and, seeing that 3-down skill set. Maybe he's the guy they wanted, RJ Harvey to turn into, right? Because we were really high on that catching upside and being able to run between the tackles. And maybe that's just what Jonah Coleman is. And he can get into the end zone. So he may be the guy in the red zone here. So might bring some optimism here. And you guys were the guys that were higher on Coleman than I was. Well, actually, Schultzy and I were pretty even here with Washington. But bigz, you were a really big high on Coleman. So I like this. I think the Broncos are going to be in a lot of scoring situations. And if something were to happen to Dobbins, I think Jonah Coleman's going to be the guy in there right out of the gate there. So, we'll have to wait and see approach. But obviously, right now we got to temper expectations. But I'm not as gloom about the landing spot. I think this could be something better in the future. And we saw what Peyton
Mike.
I know, but I'm just saying this could be a guy worth holding on to and even drafting early enough so you don't have to waste a lot of waiver in some of these leagues, because I see potentially him turning out some profit this year. So yeah, maybe not draftable, but certainly in the later rounds in deeper leagues he could be. Love it. All right, what do we got here? Let's bring our mugs back onto the screen here, and let's end this show in style. There we go. We're back. Hi, there you are, bigz. Okay, green screen. All right, so let's talk about what we got going on the network here. We got a lot going on, and the rookie prospect guide just dropped the second level here. So we got that going on. Be sure to hit that scan me. Anything else we got going on, bigz? What do you got?
Lots of shows.
Lots of them.
Lots of shows. We're ready to rock. And watch them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna see you next week for sure.
Website fantasysportsadvice.com. Go to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lots of articles hitting the streams. Yeah, a lot happening. No, actually, be sure to check that out. Be sure to check out the website. Be sure to check out all the articles hidden down there, and also the rookie prospect guide. It's in Scan Me in that QR code, and like bigz says, subscribe.
Scan the QR code. We hope you win.
Hope you win, folks. We'll see you next time. Peace.
We've all been there, watching a can't-miss rookie bust while your rival scoops up the next superstar on waivers. The 2026 class is deep, talented, and full of landmines. Do you know who's actually worth the 101? Stop guessing, start scouting. The Fantasy Sports Advice Network 2026 Rookie Prospect Guide is your blueprint for a dynasty. The experts from the Fantasy Forecast, the Devy Dojo, the Dynasty Pulse have logged the hours so you don't have to. From advanced analytical models to raw film grading, we give you the data that translates to Sunday points. Don't just participate in your draft, dominate it. Download the 2026 guide at fsan.com today. Your championship starts here.